Well, this is an exciting time. We're starting off startup talks for the year. Couple things to go over before we get started. It's been such a great run. We've had a year of this. We've had about eight of these series so far, and Hiro's our ninth one. We also have, and you'll see very soon, we have about a dozen people already lined up for future interviews. So every single month, we're going to be visiting here. We're also Facebook Live. We also repackaged this interview and we put it up on YouTube and also Startup Talks websites and so forth. So we're very, very excited about that. There's a lot of people to thank in the background of all of this, and Quan and Pyle and others in the group, but I have to let everyone know to thank Infinite Energy for their sponsorship for the food and drink tonight. They've been with us since day one, and they've continued to be by our side to make this happen. Also, I think it's really important, and I know for those of you who have been watching this series before or been here, it'll be a little bit redundant, but I think it's very important for those who may just watch one show or whatever, is this Startup Talks is really about showcasing Gainesville in this region, the Gainesville region, because we are a regional hub. If you look at the economics and dynamics of the community that we live in, be it especially on like the retail front or even regional approach from education as well, with our education institutions being Santa Fe College and also the University of Florida. But we want to showcase Gainesville as that really great spirited place for the startup community. I won't go into great detail, but my brother back in the mid-70s graduated the first, was College of Engineering, but the first class of computer sciences at the University of Florida, and didn't have the opportunity that many of the students here today and the young people of our community have in being welcomed to launch their companies and so forth. And he ended up in Silicon Valley, like a lot of people his age at the time, to go and to do a startup. So I think those times have really changed. And I think it's important that we showcase organically all the different things that are happening in the Gainesville region. Before we start the interview with Hiro, I also think it's very unique to look at entrepreneurship. I've started 11 companies. I'm actually in the midst of starting my 12th right now. Many entrepreneurs are somewhat confused, not confused themselves, but the actual term about what really is, we'll call it sexy. A lot of things are in the digital world. We heard, here was an actual tangible product that's bringing health conscious people to their senses about living a better lifestyle. That's a disruptive product. That's a product, and it's going to use the digital medias to be able to reach out to people and so forth. Some are products that are tangible in nature, some are digital. You see phones and so forth that really have completely revolutionized the way we live. But some of the things are simply about making the experience better. Customer service, that's really what it really kind of comes down to. When you're really trying to compete, I heard earlier about who's your competitors. So you have to compete for customers. And I think just from a very cursory look at tonight's interview, that's the disruption that Dragonfly has had on the market. It is a superior product and a superior experience because you have a myriad of choices when it comes simply to where you're going to eat tonight, right? And so that's what I find very fascinating about Hiro's story, and I think you're going to learn a lot about that. So we'll dive in. Let me tell also those who have not been here yet, the little bit of the format. So there's about a 5-minute introduction, 10, maybe 10, about the life of Hiro. Where are you from, your family, your favorite grade in school, whatever that is. So we want to hear about you and kind of, the genesis, if you will. And then we're going to transform into those younger years and your life experiences and work experiences and how you actually created this idea to actually launch your own company. At the end, we're going to leave about 5 or 10 minutes open for some questions from the audience. So if you have anything, sit on those questions and we'll definitely get to them. So if I forget to ask something, which I always do, and if you have a better question, then certainly we're going to open that up to the floor for about 10 minutes of questions and answers. So it's a great format. It's worked very well before. So we'll go ahead and start out. So first of all, what a great name. How could you go wrong with the name Hiro, right? So anyways, tell us a little bit about who you are and where you were born and raised, and a little bit about yourself.
I appreciate it. Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for inviting me. I think that's more important. I don't know who would actually want to listen to what I have to say. And so I'm a little surprised that people actually showed up, and whoever's on live watching me. But who's been to Dragonfly? I just want to ask that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, I appreciate it. Well, let me ask you, can you leave your hand up? Out of all that, who goes at least once a year? Okay. Once every 6 months? Okay. Once every 3 months? Once every 2 months? Once every 1 month? Okay. Once every 3 weeks? Once every 2 weeks? Once every, wow. I have to just do a little something. I just want to say thank you so much. I mean, it's an honor.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
And I mean, you know, truly, that means a lot. And for someone to, is making me a little shaky because you know, it's an honor. So I really thank you. But
Yeah.
But I think, you know, I think in my culture, when you ask me how I started this, service is an honor. And to take care of somebody has always been a privilege for me. And growing up, that's just the one thing that I've always found out that I enjoy doing. To just tell a quick story about how I started this. I'm a Gator. I went to University of Florida, and I'll date myself, 1997. That's when I graduated. My grandmother raised me in South Florida, so I grew up in South Florida for part of my life. I was a legal immigrant, so I moved over here, and my dad just couldn't find a job, so we went back to Hong Kong, and I ended up staying here. And you know, if you're in the U.S., where do you go? I'm sorry, if you're in Florida, most of you guys just apply to University of Florida. And so by default, I ended up applying to University of Florida, but I didn't get the offer to come to school here. So I ended up kind of like knocking on admissions saying, what did I do wrong? Well, number one, your SAT wasn't good enough. Number two, you know, there's too many people that are better than you. So I parked my butt right outside of admissions, and I just pretty much just like begged them to let me in. And said, okay, I think we have a spot for you. Someone didn't come through, so you know, we'll let you through, and you know, you can actually take that spot. So I made it in, you know, for the summer, and my first year wasn't the greatest, but I think through you know, hard work, I finally eventually graduated after 4 years. But throughout the 4 years in school, like many of you guys, I'm sure many of you actually work and have part-time jobs, and it's not that easy trying to pay for your bills and also, you know, follow your aspirations of education. So I was working at this restaurant called Kotobuki. It's a little small mom and pop place. I was a server, and I was able to finally get a graduate and kind of like pay for my school during those years. So I graduated in '97, and I was on my way. I got a marketing and economics degree. I went to Japan, worked for a couple years selling furniture to a lot of the antique dealers in China. Then one of the guy who was an avid collector was the executive of Leo Barnett, an advertising agency over in Chicago, and said, hey, you know, if you like this industry, I can hook you up with an interview. So I quit my job in Japan and flew over to Chicago for the advertising agency, and after like I think 3 to 4 interviews, I didn't get that job. So I was kind of stuck, devastated, and saying, okay, I graduated from UF, I have a pretty good resume from Japan, but here I am, you know, like jobless and unemployed. What am I going to do? So I came back to UF in 1999 and started working at a couple of restaurants, just waiting on tables, just to kind of make ends meet. And my brother, fortunately, was cool enough, and he let me stay on his couch. And he said, here, if you want, you can just, you know, veg out on the couch here, but not for too long because, you know, you're my older brother, so do something that's inspirational. So what happened was I I put together a business plan, and I presented it to the business owner that I was working for, and she was a little burning out at that phase, so she didn't want to. She's like, she didn't want anything else to do with the restaurant. She's like, to be honest with you, I don't want anything else. So I appreciate you taking the time to create this business plan, but it's not really what I want to do. So I took that business plan, and mind you, this is 1999, and I was unemployed. All I had was a vision, just like earlier on, of a product that I thought that could make happen. And I knocked on all these doors and asked everybody for money, but everyone was like, "No, I'm sorry, the restaurant's too high risk. There's nothing that we want to invest in. I'm sorry, you can't do this." Blah blah blah. Until I met Ken McGurn. I don't know if you know Ken McGurn. He's the developer for downtown Gainesville. He gave me a opportunity to pretty much rent out a space, and said, if you have a vision, and if there's something that you want to do, I'll believe in you. And you just have to do is put together a letter of intent, an LOI. And so I don't know if you guys in real estate, you know what an LOI is? You know what it is, right?
Oh yeah.
So those of you not, I went home. It wasn't back in the days you can like Google anything. And so I wrote a letter saying, I intend to open a restaurant and succeed. That was my submission of an LOI.
Does everybody know what an LOI is? No. Okay.
So yeah, Mitch, LOI.
Well, it's about a typically 2 to 4 page document, and it outlines a structure in which you're going to rent a space. So it'll say who you are, who the tenant is, how many years you're going to rent it, the rent, and it spells it out. And so it's the old, it came after the handshake. So back in the day, you would handshake and say, "You're going to rent my place for $1,000 a month or whatever," and you go, "Yes,"
Yeah.
and you're going to do it for 5 years, and then the letter of intent came. Interestingly, letters of intent technically are non-binding, so it's to set the stage for the contract,
Right.
or to set the stage for the lease. And so if you just write something that says, "I intend to open a restaurant," that's not exactly a letter of intent.
Yeah.
And it has more structure to it. So I hope I explained it
Yeah.
well enough.
So if I were to give Mitch my LOI that said that, he probably would be like, go to hell. Go away.
I wouldn't do that. But.
In a nice way. So that was how ignorant I was. To be honest, I didn't know what I was getting involved. And I just opened the restaurant on a shoestring budget, maxed out my credit cards. I remember going to Maui Teriyaki because they were open back then, and we waited for that happy hour period so that I can, get like 3 to 4 chicken bowls and stock it up in the fridge.
Right.
And this is when my brother was supposedly trying to go to school, and he wasn't really, doing too well. So what I ended up doing was I called him up and said, "Hey, do you want an opportunity to work with me and to become our chef?" And my business partner, Song, also. 18 years later, all 3 of us are still together.
Wow.
So I made a lot of mess ups and screw ups, and I don't think there's enough time to discuss all of those. But I'd love to share some of those journey with you guys.
Fantastic. So let's go back to the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Where were you born?
Oh.
I'll rifle through these, but where are you from?
Hong Kong.
Hong Kong, and you were married?
Yeah. Well. Yeah. I'm not sure if it's legally married.
Okay.
15 years.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Same difference.
Better half.
But I know you have a new child. So
Yes.
You have one?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
And go back to now, when you started the restaurant, was that 1999?
1999. Yep.
Okay, fantastic. So some of these interviews I know too much, and so it's hard to kind of peel the onion layer back. And but I'll do my best to kind of make sure that everybody kind of knows the journey. So you start the restaurant, and it's funny because I used to go there with Freddie Wiebe.
Yeah.
The original one.
Yeah.
Within the first Ken McGurn spot, because you moved.
Yes.
So how long were you in the original spot?
5 years.
Okay.
Yeah, we were in there 5 years, and to honestly speaking, we were. It was in the days when everybody was working at corporate and they were climbing that corporate ladder.
Yeah.
And I told my business partner, "Let's do this until we find a real job."
Oh, wow.
And basically, we looked at our bank account and said, oh, wow, we have a little bit of money. What do you want to do? You want to buy, basically, do you want to buy a new car? Or do you want to get, new tools for the restaurant?
Right.
And I mean, this is the day where my business partners, his hubcaps were falling off of highways, and he was holding his muffler with strings and everything.
Right.
But we obviously ended up doing the, I don't know if it was a smart thing, but we reinvested it back into the business.
Right. So for those who weren't here, so where Mark's restaurant is, I believe,
Yeah.
if I'm correct, you
Yep.
were there, correct? Okay. So where Mark's restaurant is now downtown is where the original Dragonfly was.
Yep.
And then at the time there was a Hooters on the corner
Yep.
where your current location is.
Yep.
So Hooters went out and you filled that space.
Yeah.
And so just for sake of like stepping the game up, which you certainly did because you changed the whole look and feel and the cooks out in front and everything. How many square feet was your original space?
We started with 2,000 square feet.
Okay, and what do you have today there?
4,500, about 45 to 5,000 square feet.
So you doubled your business
Yeah.
footprint in just a matter of 5 years, which
Yeah.
is very, very strong. So before we talk about your other locations, because I was telling Hiro that I go to his Orlando one about 6 times a year or so, whatever, a lot. It's kind of my date destination when I go to Orlando. But so let's talk about the building of the company.
Yeah.
You know, what we're really trying to do with Startup Talks is find those common themes between all the entrepreneurs. Like, what is the common theme here that makes these individuals successful? So, so when you started out, let's talk about your hiring process. Like, how did you hire the first person?
I think, well, as like new businesses, what we end up doing is, do you want to work for me? Do you want to work for me? Do you want to work for me? And so 100% of those people are not with me.
Right,
obviously.
right.
And that's a lesson that we all learned, but definitely has evolved throughout the years. Hiring is definitely the number one critical challenges that we've gone through. From finding your business partner, that's absolutely, we tend to go into business with people that are like us, that love the same music, that like the same Facebook pages. And truth be told, that's not a good recipe for a good business partner. They should completely be different from you. And I think it's one of those mistakes that we all learn as we go through. Hey, my brother, I love him to death, right? But hey, it's convenient, so let's hire you too. You're my chef.
Right.
So I'm sure you guys are wiser than I am. You could probably mentor me back, and you would have said, Hiro, those I think aren't the rules that we're taught going to school. But fortunately, my business partner is completely different from me. My brother is completely different from me also.
Right.
And so we were fortunate in that sense. A lot of the new employees that we've hired, before it was very haphazard, but now we've actually have a cultural values that we look at, and we always say we can train somebody how to make sushi, but we can't train them how to smile. And so that's just so critical. We actually hire on personality and train on skills. Yeah.
Right. So when did you start thinking about additional locations?
Expansion basically came organically. We don't have like a huge financial backing to say,
Right.
okay, our plan is to get 100 locations.
Right.
Everything is financed internally, and the growth truly happened not because of that, but when I mean by organic, we looked at our employees and our team, and a small 2,000 square foot restaurant was just too small to house so many talent, and so we have a cultural values called expand talent. I courageously take initiative to make changes happen. Basically, that's one of those tenets that we live by. And when a dishwasher is scrubbing so well, you promote him to become our prep person. And our prep person is amazingly making sure everything is organized. You promote him to become our fryer. If the fryer guy is doing so well, you promote him to become our next rice sushi guy. And then it goes up and up and up. It's a true story. The story I'm talking about is my chef, the executive chef that runs this location. He's been with me for 14 years. and he started off as a dishwasher. Now he's getting paid 6 figures just to run the restaurant. So it's pretty much, if you know, back to that, you know, talent.
Yeah.
And then he's got his underlings that worked for him. They saw that, oh wow, expand talent. I courageously take initiative to make changes happen. Oh, I see what that means. You know, I can also make that much money and lead a kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went out and looked for other opportunities to open up other concepts and other restaurants because of that value, cultural value that we not just talk, we actually do it and live by those.
Right. So I'm going to go back to the culture. So, you know, there's a balancing act between the, you know, just getting product out, customer service, culture. You know, where do you see all those meet together? So when you, for instance, okay, one of the most powerful things I've seen in startup talks is for a business owner to say, how many of you, and you dial down to the person who spends money at your business on a regular basis, and you got up to go thank them. There is no better level of customer service than appreciation like that, right? So part of my questions are, where do you learn those kinds of traits? Where do you, you know, where are you inspired to understand the value of that? Because for us to be able to, you know, translate that to other companies and other startups and so forth is extremely valuable. Yeah. And so, how did you come about to derive that those are the kinds of things and inspirationally that you're going to transgress to others?
Mitch, that's an excellent question, and I think that's one of the things that we struggled with so many times. It's like, what keeps me up at night, like, you know, is my values of celebrating memories and celebrating our guests and seeing service as an honor. Is that truly lived by my 230 employees?
Right.
And you know, I go through at least I think 15, 20,000 customers a week throughout all the locations. And for us to truly, you know, is my server that took care of that person having a bad day, and are they really living that culture? Mm-hmm. And so, Mitch, that's an excellent question. The way I've learned to do that is what I'll simplify it by, we'll call it a pyramid. And we all know what a pyramid looks like, right? So I'll simplify it to that. There's a point at the top. And we call that the, right at the top, you draw 4 quadrants to it. Right at the top, it's the results that I want. And so we'll call this the results pyramid. And for example, I want to make sure that my server takes great care of my guest. That's a result, right? But if that's the results that you want, there's another layer right underneath that triangle, and that's called the action, right? We tell our servers to stand up and appreciate the guests that come in on a weekly basis, and then you'll get that result. But too many people just stop at that level, and it's called the action dilemma. And there's a thick line right underneath. It's like seeing an iceberg. You know, you see the tip of an iceberg, but there's a lot more to that. I can't tell my employee what to do and then to get the results that I want, right? Remember, it's action and results. Right. What I've learned to discover, there's another layer right underneath that. And guess what that is? What do you guys?
It's frozen. No,
it's frozen.
Motivation.
What's that?
Motivation.
Maturation?
No, to motivate.
Motivation. Very close. Absolutely. Motivation. And where does motivation come from? Inspiration. We call it beliefs, the heart. And I think too many people stop at that action results, and it drives you insane. Do this and you'll get that results. You know, stop eating your favorite cake and you'll lose weight. That's just, come on, that's just insane for you to tell people to do and to hopefully get results. What we're missing is that layer of belief. When you actually talk to the heart, the hand is automatic. You know, it's just when you can get through, your employees, if you touch their heart, they'll actually, you know, then you can ask for their hand. You can't ask for their hand until you first touch their heart. And that's the belief part that I truly believe is critical to any businesses that we have. And And so, but how do you get them to believe, right? That's easy. It's easier said than done. So that's where comes the last final piece of that results pyramid. Anybody know? What do you think that is? So, if you want someone to believe, what do?
You be a role model.
You be a role
Yeah.
model?
Right.
Believe in you and they
Yeah.
see you as a leader.
I'm gonna give you the microphone. You
Lead-
had all the answers.
Leadership.
Leadership, it's experiences. And once I simplified this and saying it's experiences that lead to the belief that leads to the action that leads to the results, you can achieve anything. I mean, anything. Like any goals that you have, anything you want to sell, it all goes back down to this very simple triangle here. And it's really about culture. And that experience at the very bottom level, we have tools that are in place at the restaurant to try to get our new employees to buy into the vision that
Right.
we have. So, but yeah, that's in a nutshell. That's what we try to do.
That's incredible. That's awesome. So before we go into the next locations and so forth, you talked about, so a lot of startups, their big question mark for success, they think, is money.
Yeah.
So you talked about credit cards, so there's that bootstrapping aspect and funding and those kinds of things. So what did, ultimately, what did it take for you to open the restaurant? I mean, was it just truly all hands on deck and pennies off the floor and?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
let me rephrase the question, because we kind of know you use credit cards. What would you tell others in regards to startups and how to leverage credit,
Yeah.
high risk credit, high rate credit, family and friends? What point do you see that there's not enough fundamentals there to go forward with either other people's money or you risking yours? How much risk do you think a person should put out there?
You mean as the other people, when you ask for other people money,
That
or
too.
your own?
So
Well,
if let's hypothetically
yeah.
say you said, Mitch, I want to open another restaurant and need $1 million.
Yeah.
Okay, how risk adverse should I be, or how risk adverse should you be
Yep.
to lead somebody down that path?
Absolutely, yeah.
Or, and it may dovetail into maybe one of your failures,
Yeah.
right? How risk adverse should you be with your own $1 million?
Right. No, that's an excellent point. I think yesterday, Mitch, you shared with me, it's all about leverage.
Yep.
And we were talking about a real estate example, and
Yeah.
you taught me that, hey, you can buy $100 with $20,
Right, right.
or buy, or leverage that.
That's a secret.
Yeah. So really, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
How do you make less into more? I think that's the age-old question of trying to leverage and magnify the money. But you have to be willing to sacrifice everything when you start off. And the person who believes in that vision has to truly understand that you're willing to do that also. Ken McGurn, who really was the first person that believed in us, really saw that I was willing to put it all.
Mm-hmm.
And if we go timidly and not be willing to take that chance and risk, and if they can pretty much smell that a mile away, no one's going to believe in you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's number one, having credit or credibility in yourself and belief in yourself. Money-wise, I had a lot of banks just close the door on me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think nowadays trying to borrow money is not that easy, but there's so many tools out there that you can creatively find financing. That, for example, what happened was I had the landlord invest in my build out.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for example, if my first restaurant costed $100,000 to build out, which is, I can't even buy chairs with that money.
Right.
So the point I'm saying is start small and organically grow. Don't get too ahead of yourself, because instant gratification, is the kiss of death. But if you reinvest in yourself and compound it, 18 years later, you look back behind you realize how much your net worth has just grown. But I don't blame everybody nowadays, because you know what? I mean, I think I remember standing in front of a microwave with a friend of mine. He punched in 60 seconds, and 30 seconds in, he's like, I can't wait. I'm just gonna eat this pizza cold. 30 seconds? I mean, when he couldn't even wait.
That's a great analogy.
But I've been there before, but it's just that with net neutrality, with internet and social media, we're such a now society, we forget that we have to pause for a moment and understand the power of compounding. Start small, start with what you can bite, but pour all your heart out into that and slowly grow into the investment where you're trying to go to. So that's
right. That's excellent advice. It was interesting. I pitched a $30 million deal today.
Yeah.
And it was funny. We were talking about pitches earlier. I don't know where the individual is, but yeah, right there. And it was. I've done a lot of pitches.
Yeah.
And I was kind of nervous. It was before a group a little bit larger than this, and but it goes back to that reinvestment.
Yeah.
Bought my first house when I was 18 years old, and it was like, okay, that's the foothold, and then you grow from there.
Yeah.
And people, a lot of times will say, wow, you've done well in real estate, let's say. And I go, if you only knew, it's been a 50-year journey.
Absolutely.
Because my father was in real estate when I was born. Yeah. So that didn't just happen overnight. That is a steady day in, day out climb. And so I think that's a really, really great advice to reinvest in yourself. And I think the other thing that kind of popped out is, so in sales, I remember it was really funny. I worked for a New York Times company, real quick story. We went through sales training, there were 10 of us. Everybody went out, 9 people made sales, and the 10th one didn't. And the 10th person was me. And it was kind of funny because I felt like I had to have pom-poms in my hand. I was like, you're going to love this product, And what I learned was that you don't have to be outwardly necessarily like super enthusiastic about your product, because people will sense if you believe in your product or not.
Yeah.
And I call it oozing. So when I did sales training, I said, you will ooze your enthusiasm without even saying a word.
Yeah.
People know that you love what you do and what you produce in your product without pom-poms, And so I think you kind of jolted that forward for me to think about that. And I think that's a very valuable statement and concept to think about in terms of, you just have to, for you to be successful, people are going to know. And Ken McGurn knew, without a doubt, because he believed in you and made it happen. So one of the other areas I like to focus on are kind of the highs and lows. So we've heard some really cool stuff, and you're an amazing guy and amazing entrepreneur, and really have excelled at what you do. So let's find out, you have some other locations, and where are those?
We opened, so I had a second location in Gainesville, which for about 8-9 years, and I had to end up closing that. So that's my failure story. I think everybody has to fail once, or maybe a little bit more in order to succeed. I've also opened up Orlando 9 years ago.
Right.
And we recently, a year and a half ago, opened up Miami location.
Right. Yeah. And so why those locations so remote? I have projects far from here, and people go, why? Just do everything in your backyard.
I think it was an inner desire to prove that we can do it. I grew out of Gainesville, and people might say, Gainesville is just a university town. But when I reflect on it, it was truly a desire to say we can make it in the bigger major leagues, and to try to make not only myself proud, but to say that, for example, one question somebody asked me when I was in Miami, they're like, wow, you guys have amazing food. Where are you guys from? Which part of Japan or whatever? I'm like, no, we're from Gainesville. 352 all the way.
Right.
And so, it just gives me that much pride to say that, the freshest fish comes from Gainesville.
Right. That's awesome. So I do want to circle back on the Gainesville failure,
Yep.
as you call it. So take us, because there's a lot to learn from that, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, everybody knows that when you stumble and have to get yourself back up,
Yep.
and that's not a slow process because it took a long time to, you're investing in it and saying we can turn this thing around, and your ego probably played a part of staying in
yeah.
it longer than you should have, maybe.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And we all get there. So tell us about that store, the opening, the transformation, and then the exit.
So that concept was the Chipotle concept of Japanese food, where you can actually go down the line and build your own rolls or your bowls. When we call it rolls and bowls, lack of creativity. But what we did was, for 8 years, our sales just kept on going. First year, second year, third year, out of a small hole in the wall, like it was maybe 1,500 square feet, 2,000 at most. We were projected to gross about 1.5 to almost $2 million out of that location. Then it went negative after 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, to the point where I was hitting about $800,000, and my break-even point was at 900. So I was dishing out another $100,000
Wow.
just to even make sure that there was payroll. But the biggest lesson I've learned, there's so many things I learned from that, and I think I've learned more from that than all my successes at the Dragonfly here, or the Orlando Dragonfly, or the Miami location. If you're talking about brick and mortar, location. That's just so critical. You can have a good strategic, good plan, but if you put it in a bad place, you said this yesterday, there's a concept for every location, but you better know what your concept is and what location you want to put it in.
Yeah.
Another is just basically emotionally being invested in it. You got to be detached from your business. And be emotional and passionate, yet leave your heart out of some of these decisions so that you can cut your loss when it's needed. And truthfully, I mean, I can just go on, but there was just certain type of wrong people were in the mix. The list just goes on.
So I have a fascinating question. So I used to take products to, I worked for New York Times, new product division, and we would take these new concepts and we were like so on fire, it's gonna work, it's gonna be great, and so forth. And they said, where else has it been done? And I said, nowhere, we're gonna be the first. I go, no, we're fast followers.
Yeah.
And they said that all the time, we are fast followers.
Yeah.
So had your concept been done before?
No, back then when we started in 2008, it was the Poke Bowl concept, and if you go to any
Okay.
cities now, it's actually huge.
Right.
So I was a little too fast for the time.
Yeah.
It just, the trend wasn't there, and they were understanding it, but now it's like over, everywhere.
Well, there's a lot of, I mean, there was MySpace, and then Facebook,
Yep.
sweeps through, and there's who knows about Uber and Lyft, and of course there were concepts before that, before even Uber.
Yeah.
And they kind of, and so there is that element of being a fast follower.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I just think that maybe you were before your time.
Yeah.
Because I see it successful around the country. So I want to talk a little bit about the need to build relationships. So you talked about the landlord side of things. That was for a brick and mortar type business. And then the banks,
Yep.
closed the vault on you. What is the value of building relationships within a community?
No, I mean, it's everything. As a matter of fact, it's our mission statement.
Is that right?
Our USP, our unique selling proposition, our competitive advantage is pretty much all about relationship. And I'll sum it up and I'll share with you. It's crafters of meaningful connection and artful flavor. Crafters of meaningful connection and artful flavor. Quick story. When I first started the business, it's all through the mistakes that I've made that I've learned that these are important tenets of running a business. But we had no mission statement. We had no idea what competitive advantage were. You guys are way ahead in my game. But I had a customer that used to come in religiously every Friday. It was a husband, wife, and his son. And you can tell that he was like there because he would have this loud, obnoxious, distinctive laugh. And in a small restaurant with 10 tables, you know he'd arrived. Came every week. Then one night, he didn't show up. And we were like wondering, oh, what happened? Next Friday came along, he didn't show up again. I later find out that he had stomach cancer. And so, he ended up in the hospital, and he was just basically spending all his time over there trying to recover. Long story short, I get a phone call and saying, hey, Dave's not gonna make it, but he really wants Dragonfly. And so,
Oh, wow.
so I went to the hospital, and I got my chef, my brother, and the guys to set up a whole station over at the hospital over at North Florida.
Uh-huh.
And he was just like the happiest guy ever. He passed away the next day.
Oh, wow.
So the point I'm making is that made me realize who we really were. It wasn't about the food. It wasn't about the drinks. And we went back and we said, all right, well, we're truly about that relationship and that meaningful connection. And so we said, we're truly crafters of meaningful connection and artful flavor. His wife basically said, when we were opening up Orlando, do you want to take our ashes and put it down in the foundation? So that's what we did.
Oh, wow.
But we put it right in the middle of the kitchen. We call the kitchen the heart of the house, and we can basically just hear him. And those are the type of experiences I was talking about, that when I share it with the new employees that walk in, and they, that story changes their experiences about who we really are, and allows them to take the action and to go the results of celebrating that type of service. And so, back to how important is service. I mean, that's everything.
That's a wonderful story. It's hard to ask a question after that. So I'm going to go back to I have a couple final questions, then we're going to open it up for everybody. One is, you talked about your business plan. You'd gone and written this business plan. So when I mentor young companies and so forth, we talk about, where's your business plan kind of thing. How much value do you place in that process?
A lot.
I mean, because
Yeah.
you've even had let me ask a blind question. Did you do a business plan for the Orlando store?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
So talk a little bit about the value of a real business plan.
You're asking all these great questions that.
That's my job.
But yeah, absolutely. And I didn't know any of these. And
Right.
Mitch, I wish you were my mentor back then when I first started, because I would have saved a lot of headache
Yeah.
and time and money. But those business plans, it always ends up on a bookshelf, and it collects dust. And we all go through the exercise of doing it, and by the time it's like written and you push the final D end, it's already become obsolete.
Mm-hmm.
It's so true, and especially in your competitive field now, it's the obsoleteness is just so much faster. But it's so important to do the business plan, and here's the reason why. For one thing alone, strategy. I think there's two parts of a business. There's culture, and then there's strategy. And we always say, culture will eat strategy for breakfast, right? Is that the saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the business plan actually is the strategic part of your product, and it explains basically how do I put this the best way? It's not what you sell, but the why you sell it.
Right.
And that why is so important, and we lose sight of because we get so infatuated with features. It can do this, it can do that, it can pause, it can play, it can PIP, you can watch 2 TVs at once. And ultimately, who cares? No one really buys on logic, but they really buy on the emotional side of it. And I'm probably quoting Simon Sinek right now, but
Right.
why was it called Why or
What's that? Yeah,
start with why,
yeah.
right? And it's so true that your business plan, even though when you do it, you should really look at your strengths, your unfair competitive advantage. What makes you that good that other competitors can't try to copy you? What is that? Who are your target market? You know what? You better know who they are, because they have, our customers are our king. They have
choices.
Yeah, choices. And they have value chains that they go through.
Right.
From the moment they look to see where to go eat or if they should buy a certain product that you offer, are you really servicing their need? And in my industry, I mean, thankfully you can't Amazon me yet, but pretty soon I'm sure they're gonna come a day where they're gonna come and get me. They might do 3D print my food and whatnot, but you know, virtual reality into Dragonfly. So whatever out there, it's gonna happen. But one thing you can't take away is that strategy of what I really am. And so, you know, and the business plan is what really spells out all of those secret ingredients and secret sauces. And so don't just make a boring business plan. We're gonna go out there and really, really dig in and find out why should someone come to you?
Right.
Why should they really, really spend their time and hard-earned money to come buy your product?
Yeah. So I have one last question, and you can make it as long or short that you want. But so take us through a typical day of Hiro. Get up at noon.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you go to downtown and start
Yeah. Well,
all the
if
bars.
you're up till 4 a.m., then getting up at noon is normal.
This is what I do. I recently read an excellent book, and I'm not going to try to say it any better because this guy said it well. It's called Thank You for Being Late. You know, machines, when you push this pause button, what do? It stops. You know, computer stops. You know, when you press a pause on a video, you just stop right there. But we're humans, we're different. When we push the pause button, we're supposed to reflect. And we're supposed to think back and take a moment to be aware and be present. And that was just a beautiful line that I took to heart. I realized that I was actually doing that. So my typical day, I wake up religiously early in the morning. I used to work out first at I wake up at 5 o'clock, go to the gym by 6 o'clock, come back at 7 o'clock. But after the baby, things changed a little bit. That's my excuse. But from 7 o'clock all the way to about 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, I read and I learn. And I do that for about Monday, pretty much all the way through Friday. And then my office day starts at 11 o'clock. I have two types of work. What I'm describing to you right now is my pause moment. So I get away, and I go to Virginia, thankfully, because that's where my wife and kids are. And I don't surround myself around the restaurant, but that's pretty much my pause moment. And so I read my book till about 11 o'clock, then I do all my office emails for a couple hours, then I start working on all the strategic plan. Next thing you know, it's already 8 o'clock at night.
Right.
And my fiance is like, all right, come out and start eating dinner, and you get away from the computer. But that's, I have enough employees and leaders that pretty much keeps my
Right.
weekly days busy.
Right.
But when I come back to Florida and I visit all my restaurants, the first thing I do is, as soon as I get into town, I do Gainesville, Orlando, Miami. I walk straight into the restaurant and go straight to the kitchen, and I say hello to my employees. You know, sometimes my regulars that I know stop me, but I go straight to my employees, my leaders, and to really give them a hug and to tell them that I appreciate them, you know, for what they've done. Then I go say hi to all my employees. Then I go out on the floor and I thank all my customers. I take a moment to really just interrupt their conversations if they are, but I really just stop by and say thank you for really coming by. The next thing you know, it's like already at night. I do that till about we're about to close.
Right.
Certain times I actually try to help them close out by busting out the mop and finishing off on washing the dishes, just to let them know that I really, really appreciate what they're doing.
Right.
And then I go home. And I repeat that for the whole week while I'm at the restaurant. And unfortunately, with 3 locations and we're hopefully building more stores, I don't have the opportunity to do that. But whenever I still can, I'm going to make sure that I still do that for the guys.
Very, very good. Okay, so there's some questions I forgot to ask. We have about 10 minutes or so left. Let's, a couple questions from the audience, a few questions. The first one's always the toughest.
I've heard you guys speak a couple times, and I've always appreciated the big ideas that you bring to the restaurant industry, and I think that's what distinguishes you. I'm just wondering, did you start the business with those sorts of large ideas, or did they slowly evolve over time?
Definitely evolved over time. Yeah, that's a great question because maybe it's tied to our leadership learned or born, and I was not the head of the class. I was not the soccer team captain. If anything, I still have my report card that says, "Man, if Hiro paid attention, he would actually do better in school." And so, to answer your question, those are absolutely learned. But there's one thing I realized how much I didn't know. I realized how ignorant I was, and I actually embraced that and realized that there was just so much more to learn. And I just ended up making that one of my value sets. So,
Great question.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
What helped you when you first opened your restaurant, with being able to get the first customers and put your name out there and be able to have people come in and enjoy your restaurant?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first set of group of people are going to be your friends and family.
Right.
Everybody that you just. But nowadays with Facebook, you have so much power to leverage that. Back then, it was just pretty much my flip phone and looking through who I can call in. So we called that a friends and family day. I made sure because I knew that those friends and family were critical to make them into your ambassadors.
Right.
I gave them pretty much 50% off on the whole week to make sure that they really came in and loved our product. And so give and you shall receive. I didn't expect anything from them first. And then I made them refer a second set of friends and I gave them 40%. And then I gave them 30% and 20 and 10. So the power of referrals was critical for me once I created a circle of influencers to really spread the love for us. So, yeah. But yeah, I'm actually doing that right now. So whenever I open a new restaurant, I don't have the crowd that I have built up in Gainesville. And so it humbles me every time I open a restaurant that I don't care if there's only one person at the restaurant, that guest better rave. Because when they go back out, I always tell my employees, you don't get paid by cash, you get paid by referrals. I don't want the money today. I want your lifetime value money. That's just so much more important. And so the one lesson I'm trying to teach my guys here is that after 18 years, they become a little bit complacent. And so I have a different set of challenges over here. It's like, how do you, when you have a train that's going at 1,000 miles per hour, how do I train them the blind spots to tell them to stop, and slow it down a little bit? These guests that are coming in here isn't because of what you're doing today. It's what we've done for the past 18 years. So don't piss it away.
Yeah.
So, every single set has a different challenges. Great question.
Go ahead.
Sir.
So I'm feeling you speak, and I sense this positivity that you have, this good vibe. I was wondering, how do you maintain that in a business setting? Was it modeled for you too, or is it something that's inherent to you?
Yeah. I'm actually crazy. I go home. I have a punching bag that I go home like,
Right.
No, that's an excellent question, because you're right. Like the amount of customers that I deal with and all the employees, I think the power of meditation and breathing, I really take to heart taking the moment to really relax and be aware of the present. As hokey and soft that sounds, but we have to learn to really relax. And I play golf religiously on a weekly basis, just so that that 4 hours is like chill moment. And my wife just like gives me crap about it, but I'm like, look, it's either me go off on you or give me my
ball.
give me my moment, so I can do my thing. So it's I think finding inner peace and when you strive for something that you're just in love with, right? It's okay. Like it's stressful, but it's just part of life. Like we all go through our ups and downs, and just be aware that just don't let it eat you up. Just learn to let it bounce off your shoulder.
The best position to be in is to be where you're fulfilling your passion, right? And so, like I was trying to explain with the pom-poms, people will know. I mean, that positivity doesn't have to be even intonation. It doesn't have to be,
Yeah.
people will know. They feed off that energy. And truthfully, every time we roll out of bed in the morning, we make our own decision to be happy or moody or sad or whatever emotion you're going to pull forward.
Yeah.
It is a complete 100% up to each individual.
Yeah.
I think it's a great question for that, because I don't think enough people do meditate or reflect on their own energy that they're trying to, the vibe that they're giving off.
Right.
And so, I mean, I hear a lot about that, because I'm kind of the same way. I'm kind of just go, 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 go. And I mean, Quan knows I've got, I retired in September, and I have more going on now than I probably ever had going on. So I just call it my hobby.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, it's the most remarkable thing, because it's more of an attitude than anything.
Yeah.
It's just a complete release, like, wow, I'm doing really and truly, I'm doing what I want on my own terms. And with that, and again, Quan knows the people within my organization are like, good gracious, let's go, and it's infectious.
Yeah.
But you don't have to have, a loud tone or anything. It really is a core of believing in yourself, believing what you're doing, following your passions. And I mean, I know that's what you have done. And the good question back here, do things evolve? That's why all of us are here. We're all evolving. I do this in part to learn from the guest. I'm not dumb. I mean, I'm literally, taking all of this in as well, because we all have, opportunities to learn. So, one more question? Two more questions. We'll take them both. Go ahead.
I'm trying to figure out the iceberg of you. So like that pyramid. I'm just wondering, I know that you've learned all this, a lot of it as you're going, but like I don't hear other restaurant, like when I've heard other restaurant owners talk, they talk about food costs, price, location, whatever. And you guys, I've never heard you guys spend much time on that. So I'm wondering, were there any like formative experiences that left an impression on you before you got into this business? Or were there, you mentioned your culture, or in your culture that service is very important. I'm curious about things like that. But I know a lot of it just comes from you as a person.
Yeah.
That too.
What's your name? Anthony. Anthony, that's an excellent question. Thank you for asking that, because now you're making me reflect. I truly don't know. I'll be honest with you, and maybe you answered the question better than I could have. I'm just being myself. It's just. I think it's probably the life experiences I've gone through, but then I read a lot, and I'm realizing that I'm not able. I didn't come up with a triangle. Change the culture did.
Right.
And basically, it's once I looked at that, I'm like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. That's what I've been doing, but let me simplify it for my team. And if I were given an opportunity to yap my mouth, let me share that with somebody who would listen. And so I think life experiences and learn from the best out there, like Mitch, you just mentioned. We should never be arrogant, and we should always be
Right.
humble for knowledge. And so continue to learn. I think if that's the one word I'd like to use to answer that.
Last question.
I think yeah.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
So my question is, coming from like when you first started from the very beginning, how things were, what is the main, what is, if I would say, what's the thing that was the turning point for you to get to the next level and excel from there?
So did I have like an aha moment or?
Yeah, or is it multiple things, or is it just like one thing? Because when you first started, you gotta, like you said, you had your family members.
Yep.
And, you give them discounts, make sure they're always there. Of course, you mentioned the referral.
Yep.
But apart from those things, what was it that took you to the next level?
Yeah, I believe that's a great question. Your vision grows with you, right, Mitch?
Yeah.
Like Yeah, back then it was just pretty much just, do this until I find a real job.
Right.
And so that, I checked that off the list. So once that was done, you have your second set of vision and goals. But making sure that you clearly articulate what those goals are. John Spence, I don't know if you guys, I'm sure many of you guys know him. He's my mentor, and he's had me write clearly what my life is going to look like in 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. He wanted so detailed to the point where he wanted to know, like, to the sales, to like how the restaurant will look like, the type of people I'll be hiring. And once I started to do that, I made that into the next level of goals. So you basically organically grow your vision, but make sure that it's always attainable and very clear, because ambiguity leads to mediocrity.
Yeah.
So clear.
Yeah. Okay. Last question.
My question was, so we've heard about how your days now, and both of you really, but how was your normal day, if that can be said, structured when things were early, super hard, and uncertain? Because I think that is where many people, like, you can make through a month or two with pure adrenaline, but after that, you need to have something.
So you mean like when I first, if I rewind back and when I first started, how was my structured or unstructured day really like? Yeah, it sounds like a textbook answer. So give me the real hero,
Yeah, right.
what it really happened. Great question. It was just, unpredictable, and so whatever came my way, you just had to like tackle them. For me, it was let's say, in 1999, if you have to go look for financing, you got to look for financing, right? So you just, if a door was slammed on you, you just persevere and figure out more ways to do that. So my days were always filled with challenges on a day-to-day basis. I woke up and said, okay, right now it's just, when I open a restaurant, it's about construction challenges or employee challenges.
Right.
It's all relative to the situations that's in front of you and how big your goals are. You're gonna be able to list out all the things you should be doing to fill out your days. Trust me, there's not enough days,
Right.
to fill. To go and work on those things. So, if it naturally just becomes, as long as you're razor focused on your goals and you're really passionate about what you're doing, you wouldn't have to worry about that. It'll naturally, you just wake up, and true entrepreneurs, I think every single one of you guys in this room are or are going to be, you'll find ways to structure your days so that you're walking every day towards that goal. So hopefully that answered. Yeah.
I often say life is a bundle of priorities,
Yeah.
right? You're here because this is a priority to do or whatever. And I think the key is organizing those priorities.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's really, I mean, that's the value of really what's going on. Because you're like the clown spinning all these plates.
Yeah.
And the reality is you can't spin them all, right?
Yeah.
So you have to prioritize what the important ones are to keep those going. And so
Oh, yeah.
I hopefully that answered it in a way that was constructive to say, prioritize and then go get it.
Yeah, Mitch answered that. Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it's priority. That's what I was getting at. And,
Yeah.
and you're right. And there's a quick thing that I started to do now is, instead of creating a to-do list, I created not to-do list.
Uh-huh.
and that's just like scratch that off, scratch that off, scratch that off. And that's actually helped me so much more because we're not good at everything.
Uh-huh, right.
As a matter of fact, we suck at a lot of things.
Right.
So why are we doing the things that we suck at doing?
Yeah.
Find out what you're good at doing and
Stay in
spend
your lane, yeah.
leverage and spend most of your time doing that
Right.
versus, it's an 80-20 rule. And we can't do it all. So yeah, excellent question.
Yeah.
Don't waste your time on doing things you're not good at doing. Find out what those are and leverage that 20% into make that into 80%.
Yeah. Hiro, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank
well
you.
done. Let's give him a big round of applause. Yeah.